Hello everyone and welcome to the New York Empoleon's Week 1 team builder of the SDA, the Seoul Do Association. I've got to remember the names of the leagues that I'm in right now. PBAL's over. We're into a new league and it's going to be super exciting. I love this team. It's wacky, it's wild, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the fact that we're using land timer, which means we can play a little different of a style, right? I'm not worried about the 20 minutes expiring. I'm concerned about beating my opponent consistently and reliably within my own time, right? I can take as long as I need on certain turns and fast on other turns because I know I can play really quickly. I've established throughout the last year or so that the ability to make snap decisions is working for me. I'm good at that. What I need to reestablish, going back towards Gen 7 and the success that I had there, is how much can I take my time and take against an opponent who's going to take their time to do the calcs and make the necessary decisions on a given turn. And so this is a new style for me. Land and the PBAL finals did not go well, so I don't think it's going to be as big of a problem, but it is something I definitely need to be paying attention to. So this week, my opponent is Demo or Dio, coach of the Tennessee Tyrants, and we are going to have a lot of fun. If you didn't know, all the coaches' descriptions, both my opponent and everyone else, is in the description below. So go check out the entire league for week 1 because this is a brand new league and it's super exciting and I'm really glad to be a part of it. So his team is Zera Aura, Kartana, Coahes, Landorus T, Gudra Walrein, Scrafty, Mawile, Vespiquen, Galarian Slowking, and Runerigus. Now, we've seen Galarian Slowking in the TBL putting in so much work defensively, so I do want to make sure that my special threats are basically like, how do we deal with Galarian Slowking? But the good thing is, in this matchup, I have a Spectrier. You can't even run AV Galarian Slowking against that. It just doesn't want to take the hits anyway. So I'm not as stressed about Galarian Slowking in this matchup. If he brings it, it's honestly pretty much a dead mon. I think the scariest mons that I'm looking at are the top threats, the ones that are listed on the front, the fastest mons on his team. The Zera Aura, the Kartana, the Coahes, the Landorus, and the Gudra are all big threats. Scrafty, I feel like, has to come because I have a Spectrier, and you're going to bring your Dark type, right? Especially considering that's his only Ghost Resist. And that's another big thing I want to talk about. This team has no other Ghost Resist besides Scrafty. Scrafty is coming. It is AV, probably. And it is going, or might be Dragon Dance, but I would be really surprised to see an offensive Scrafty here. It's going to be AV. It's going to be Intimidate. It's going to be bulky. It's going to try to tank hits. And it's going to just knock off things. So I'm excited. This battle is going to be really fun. So we're starting off with my Mew. And it's interesting. In the future, I might end up ending with my Mew because the Mew set is, the way that I run Mew is basically like, you pick the moves on the holes that your team needs to fill. It's really, unless you're running an offensive Mew, it's really hard to make the Mew set first. The offensive Mew, obviously, you look at what your opponent's team is, you pick the best moves to the situation, and you just kill your opponent. But I'm opting for a more defensive spread with a bunch of speed to outspeed the Landorus T with the Ice Beam to just kind of kill it. I also have knockoff because I just think getting rid of items on things like Assault Vest Gudra, which can switch in once she sees the Ice Beam, thinking that I'm special. The Kartana, which I don't want to be Scarfed because then it outspeeds Spectrier. The Coahes, getting rid of the leftovers, is huge. And that is a big switch into Mew. So knockoff just seems super useful here as utility. And then spikes. This is a LAN league. So we are going to be able to set up spikes reliably and have time left over to take advantage of them on the switches my opponent is making. I don't have to worry about 20 minutes expiring. I can run spikes Roost Mew and not feel bad about it. So spikes are really good here. The defoggers, yeah, Coahes could run defog, but if it's running defog, it's not running some other move that I'm really worried about. So I want to see it. And spikes, it brings in the Coahes, takes spikes damage unless it's boots, which if it's boots, it's not leftovers, and I click knockoff and spikes later. And this Mew basically just shuts down a lot of the defensive options that he has for the mid to late game when I would be able to take advantage of it with my other mon. So it's really support and just kind of tech for the Landorus T because I just need a way to kill it. Lando T is just a big pain for me. I just don't have a good switch into it. This Mew is bulky enough to take a +2 Earthquake from a Jolly Landorus Therian, and then be able to Ice Beam back. Because Double Dance Lando T is a pain for my team. It hurts to try to deal with that. Speaking of things that are a pain for my team as the Lando T, this actually has a Shuka Berry and can also take a +2 Jolly Earthquake based on the spread that I'm going with. Just barely. It barely hangs on from Jolly. It is not taking an adamant one. And I'm running the Ice Fang again. If I'm intimidated, it's a 2-hit KO on the Lando T. That's how much attack I'm running, is just enough to make it a 2-hit KO with Ice Fang if it's an offensive Lando and I'm intimidated. It's still not a 1-hit KO even if I'm not intimidated, but after I can get a little bit of like knockoff chip or something on it, then that's fine. Ice Fang will be able to kill if I'm not intimidated. T-Spikes are fantastic in this matchup. Like I said, Galarian Slowking, I don't think it comes. I'd be really surprised if it comes, just because so many of my Mons threaten it directly. This is another one. Knockoff. Stab knockoff. Kills Galarian Slowking pretty quickly. So, and gets rid of its item. So it can't switch into the Drapion, and it doesn't threaten it anyway. So I think Toxic Spikes are there to stay, barring a defog on Comfey. I think Lando T has to be offensive, and I don't think Kartana wants to run defog this week. So I think it has to be on Comfey. And I just think like Toxic Spikes are just amazing in this matchup. Again, for wearing down those defensive options to allow my offensive breakers the chance to win the game. This thing also, it hates coming in on Comfey because it doesn't have great special defense. But Poison Jab does threaten the Comfey, so it can't really just sit there in front of me and like defog Toxic Spikes away very freely. So it will allow me to set them up, which is kind of nice. But it doesn't love switching in on the Comfey too many times, and I don't really have recovery for it. So we're just going to have to hope that this thing doesn't take too much damage and is able to check the Comfey in a pinch. But Toxic Spikes are amazing in this matchup. Knockoff's amazing in this matchup. And then Poison Jab helps me against the Comfey, and Ice Fang helps me against the Lando. And that's basically what this thing is designed to do. Next up is the Spectrier. I talked about it a couple of times already. I've gone back and forth on Shadow Ball versus Hex, and because of the fact that I have T-Spikes, I have Willow on this. I was thinking like maybe Hex is worth it, but I think the immediate power of Shadow Ball is just nice, and I don't usually find myself like, man, if only I had 35 more base power. I know it's like 55 more base power, but the idea is the same. I don't usually find myself like, man, if this had slightly higher attack on this one move, I'd be better off. It's more like, man, if this had slightly less power, I'd be screwed. So I'm weighing the worst case scenario with Hex, which is basically against a Kartana that has not been burned. And I'm realizing that Shadow Ball is just more valuable to me as a general use attack. I don't think I'm going to be able to get Sub Nasty Plot off in this particular matchup. It's unlikely I'll need to. Most of the time I'm just going to be spamming Shadow Ball, but I didn't want to be Specs. I wanted to be Colbur, to take any one hit from something like a Scarf Kartana and be able to kill it back. As long as the Kartana doesn't have too many boosts under it, I can take a knockoff from it and just Shadow Ball and kill it. And that said, if I do get the opportunity to set up like Sub Nasty Plot, you know, if he does bring like Galarian Slowking and I can switch in on that, or if I think he's going to preserve something, like he's got Kartana scarfed into, let's say, close combat, and I come in on it and I just click sub, then I get a nasty plot off. That's great. I'm totally open to it, but I have it because of those situations, but I don't think it's going to happen. And most of the time, this is going to come in, get a kill with Shadow Ball, and then go nuts. If Scrafty is even at 30%, then we can just Willow that, take the knockoff, and get out. And Shadow Ball can come in later and clean up. So Scrafty, it's a pain, but we can take one knockoff from it, and we can burn it, and we can go from there. And that's really nice to have because the Spectrier basically has use even against the worst case scenario. Next up is Scizor. I thought about running SD Scizor. I think it's the best set, but that said, okay, it's not the best set. I think it's a viable set that has very good upside. That said, I just don't need more setup sweepers on this particular team. I feel like I have enough in the Spectrier, and so I decided let's go with the Bug Bite in that slot, and let's go with a ban. I'm just going to click U-turn and Bullet Punch. I'm never going to click anything else in this. It doesn't matter what the other moves are. The banded U-turn damage, even intimidated after Lando T switches in, is doing 25 to 28%. That's not insignificant. That's a lot on the Lando T. Allows me into something like the Mew that outspeeds non-Scarf. I can check if he's Scarfed. If he's Scarfed, I can play around it. And we can Bullet Punch once the game is well in hand. It does 50% to Goodra with a Bullet Punch. It's killing a Comfey with a Bullet Punch. And Kartana doesn't want to switch in. It's doing like 50% with a U-turn to Kartana. Zeraora doesn't want to switch in. Scrafty can intimidate it, but it's, you know, still taking a big U-turn. So I figured the immediate damage from Band was just better overall than trying to get an SD off. I do have the opportunity usually to go Akaberry SD, and that would be able to take any hit from anything and come in on the Comfey and set up in front of it. And if Comfey goes for a Leech Seed, like whatever, I can always U-turn later. But I do think that the Choice Band damage is just going to help because Lando T almost always comes in, and I get up to +1, and then it just kills me eventually. So I figured, let's go with the ban this week. if I figure that Scizor would be better off as a setup sweeper in future weeks, I'll use it as that. But I have so many setup sweepers on this team that I think he'll have to like worry about that until he calcs for the ban. Next up is my Rotom Frost this week, and it is going to be Will-O-Wisp, Blizzard Reflect, and the Volt Switch. I don't know why I started with the second move there, mostly because it's the most important probably. Yes, my second Will-O-Wisp user. Yes, my opponent doesn't have a Fire type, and we are Light Clay with that Reflect because most of the things I'm worried about are physical. The Zeraora can be mixed, I guess, but the scarier set's the physical one. Kartana, Landorus, Scrafty. You see how most of the threats I'm worried about are physical, so I figured let's just have Reflect. I don't even need Light Screen this week. Volt Switch, obviously. Does Lando T switch in on a Rotom Frost? It'd have to take a Willow or possibly a Blizzard, and especially after the Reflect, I'm taking any one hit from it. So we are a defensive set this week. I'm not really offensively invested. Blizzard is basically there because, again, ice coverage is nice, but most of the time I'm clicking the other three moves. I'm not relying on this as my ice type coverage this week. And I do think this has a really good matchup here and prevents the Landorus from just spamming EQ, like locking itself into Scarf EQ, which is nice as a utility Mon, and then being able to Reflect on the switch or Will-O-Wisp on the switch, etc. So good to have. I do think it has a pretty good matchup here. Now we've gone through 5 Mons, and you may not have seen the Clefable. You may not have seen the Noctowl coming this week. Quagsire could come and take on the Lando T, but no. We're rocking out with Shiny Torracat. This week, week 1, Shiny Torracat. Why? Because it's an amazing Kartana counter. Holy cow, this thing counters Kartana so well. Obviously, Scarf Kartana can lock in a knockoff the first time and then be able to threaten it, but it actually still, even without the Eviolite, after taking a knockoff with the Intimidate, obviously, still lives a Leaf Blade from a Kartana or a Smart Strike or another knockoff. It still lives another one. So I have Parting Shot because Parting Shot allows me to get into Spectrier, Scizor, Mew, Drapion. So much easier. It's so nice. Another Will-O-Wisp user because, again, no Fire type. Just, it's free to click. Flamethrower is there for the Kartana. Exclusively for the Kartana. It does nothing else against the entire rest of the team except maybe Vespiquen. But most of the time, I'm not really clicking Flamethrower all that often. It's just if I end up in a situation where Kartana's going to stay in, I can Flamethrower and kill it. Endeavor is the tech I'm running this week to try to catch my opponent kind of napping. This thing takes a couple of hits and it gets weakened, and that's okay. I'm fine with that. Imagine, though, he goes into Goodra being like, I don't care about the Will-O-Wisp on Goodra, you know, whatever. Flamethrower's not doing anything, and I'm at like 20% because I've taken a couple hits from the Kartana, and he goes into Goodra, and the Goodra goes to 20%. Right? That thing is now neutralized for Spectrier. I don't care that I don't get the kill. I just need that thing to be weakened. Because as soon as I weaken that, or he goes into Scrafty, expecting me to be a physical set. Okay, 20%. Scrafty's now down to where Spectrier can handle it. Let's say he goes Lando, because Lando can take any one hit from this and be able to threaten back. But I can put that in range of any of my other attacks, right? Even a Drapion that's intimidated can kill the Lando from there. And again, it's just Mon after Mon. The Endeavor seems to be a really, really good option here. So while it may not come up because it needs to get this thing low health and it needs to outspeed the Mon that's on the other side of the field, which is not impossible. I'm running a decent amount of speed to outspeed uninvested Comfey. And this thing has base 90. I forgot that, you know? Incineroar is so slow that you forget that Torracat is pretty fast. So I can outspeed a lot of his team. I can Endeavor a lot of his team, bring them down to low health. Getting the Comfey down to Endeavor range, if it tries to set up in front of me, is super nice because it means that he can basically never recover any HP. He just ends up wherever I end up. And if the Comfey is trying to kill me with Draining Kiss, it's going to end up very low before it manages to kill me because I can always just survive at a low HP and just Endeavor it to basically 0. And yeah, if he tries to recover, just Endeavor again. You know, I just basically get to Endeavor for free. So I don't know how often I'll click it. It has a lot of utility here, and it has a lot of possible viability, but it's one of those moves that may not come up. So we'll see. I know this was a longer team builder. It's the first week. I'm really excited about this team. We'll see how it goes. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm not bringing Clefable week 1. Instead, I'm bringing a Torracat. So welcome to the New York Empoleon, everybody. That's how we roll today. I will see you guys all back here tomorrow with that battle. Take care, everybody.